Remington Podcast, where we take a deep dive into all things ammunition. I'm your host, Audrey Mays, and today I'm sitting down with research and development engineer Logan Henry.
Glad to be on.
Who also happens to have a hidden talent, not so hidden anymore. He is the world champion doubles trap shooter, 2024.
Yes.
Right? Yep. And 6-time All-American. So, I mean, plenty of time. You know, it's not so hidden. Plenty of time shooting trap. We're going to deep dive into trap shooting. We've done an episode on skeet and we've done an episode on clay breaking overall. So this is our deep dive into here. So I just wanted to start with, how did you get started shooting trap? Because where I'm from, that's not like super normal. But in Arkansas, it is.
It really is in Arkansas. So we have what is the acronym is AYSSP, so Arkansas Youth Shooting Sports Program. So whenever I was, I guess, 5th grade going into 6th grade, we went and toured the junior high building. And I saw that they had one of the big posters that they have in school or one of the boards on the wall, and they had a bunch of pictures of everybody shooting. And so before I was even in 6th grade, I went home that day and I told my dad, I was like, they've got a shooting program. And I think that would be really cool, So I like to hunt and stuff like that. So the next year, whenever I was in 6th grade, let's see, they start in February. I'm a very competitively natured person, so I pestered my dad until we went to Walmart and got a little hand crank thrower, where you have to hand crank it back and do it. So we started shooting clays there.
Was it a handheld or did you put it on your tailgate? It wasn't a handheld,
so we actually put it on a tire. Okay. So I think you could put it on a tailgate or a tire. And shot. So the first practice I showed up to, I think in 6th grade, I actually shot a 24 and everybody was like, who is this new guy, So ever since the 6th grade, the next year, I believe 7th grade, I went to my first state shoot. So kind of ventured into the Amateur Trap Shooting Association, went to the state shoot. And I believe it was the year after that, I actually won my first state championship here at the Remington Gun Club. So
a bit of a natural talent.
Maybe a little bit.
Okay. How much do you think is, practice, repetition, consistency versus, hey, I just can naturally have hand-eye coordination, can shoot a shotgun?
I would say that there's definitely people that are going to pick up on it faster because they have that natural hand-eye coordination. But to get to the level of perfection that, you go to the world championships, you go to these large shoots, you need to break up 98 or better in every discipline, which we'll get into the disciplines later. It takes a lot of practice and repetition, I mean, I tell people, I coach a lot of kids, go home and do 100 gun mounts a day. So that's so that you mount your gun the same way. I mean, if people who watch me or watch any of the good shooters will notice that they do everything the exact same way. I mean, down to foot placement, movement. I put my shell in and a lot of times put Remington heads up, which that's just a little gimmick to take a little time out of my routine. But I mean, they're almost what you would consider OCD type little things. Yeah. That is that level of perfection. That's what gets people to the top.
Yeah. I think that I could probably do your pre-shot routine just because I've scored you so many times. And it's a lot like, for those of you who haven't seen a trap competition, it's a lot like baseball players when they walk up to the plate to take a swing. Like, they put dirt on their hands, they do their little whatever they do with the bat, and then they step up. Yeah. It's the same thing. Do you think it's more, not so much suspicion, but do you think it's just, it gets you in that zone that you need for that next clay?
I think it gets you in that frame of mind, as well as there's probably a lot of people out there, superstition. I think we've talked about trap shooting a little bit on the show, and you guys probably know that I have my superstitions pretty severely. So
yeah, go back and listen to the Grand American one if you want to know Logan's superstitions. But so diving in a little bit into this clay breaking discipline, what exactly is trap?
So trap shooting, so we'll start out, I guess, we'll go into the disciplines later. So we'll start out as what people considers trap shooting. So it'd be what we would call singles. So you have a house, or, people who are new to it might want to call it a bunker because it is partially into the ground. That's 16 yards in front of you. So you're standing in basically like a semicircle on 5 different posts. So on those 5 different posts, you're going to shoot five clays. So the bunker or house in front of you has a clay thrower, obviously. So it's going to throw it out in angles that's somewhere like around I don't quote me on this, guys, but like 40, 45, 35 degrees, something in there. And that's the direction that the birds are going to come out of the house. So it's the orange clay birds. Most people who are going to watch this probably know. I think it's 108 millimeter bird. So it's going to throw it out in those angles. And what that kind of resembles is like a bird flying away from you. So, maybe think pheasant. A pheasant gets up in the field and flies away from you. So that's kind of going to be what that resembles, I would say.
That's usually the flight path that they take. And
a lot of the time, yeah.
Yeah. You also pheasant hunt,
Yes.
so I'm going to throw that out there. So in singles, so there's multiple disciplines of trap shooting, but in singles, the trap thrower oscillates, right? So it doesn't throw the same target every time.
Yes. So I guess I'll throw in a tidbit of legacy information. So used to it actually oscillated on a continuous. So a lot of the old timers who were very good would time that, and they knew where the bird was going to throw. So nowadays it's set up on a electrical board, so it's not supposed to be able to know where it's going to go. So it's going to oscillate back and forth, and it's going to throw anywhere in that. Let's, for this purpose, since I don't know the exact angle, call it 40 degrees. So you could get a hard right, a hard left, a center, what we call quartering targets that are in between that hard right or hard left and center.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I know that just in the culture, they're like, oh, that guy, he counts trap. And so like they think that they're waiting on it to just like
some
throw
people
straight.
still do. And I mean, they will swear to you that they can know where it's going to throw it. But I mean, just personally, I think that's a terrible idea. I don't want to know where it's throwing. I might be more liable to miss it if I know where it's going.
I know. And, there's other things that factor in light, how you can see the clays, and then also
absolutely.
wind.
We wear our special glasses so that we can see them the best. A lot of people like me, I don't like to wake up in the morning either, but I like to shoot them the closest to midday as it is so that the sun's as high above them and gives them the most sun as possible so you can see them better. Once new shooters get their form set up, then I start telling you 99% of the game, if your physical setup is correct, 99% of the game falls between your eyes and your mind. So I always tell them right in between your ears, guys,
Yeah, definitely. So we basically got into singles, which every round of trap is 25 clays, right? So that's a box of shells.
So 5 at each station, 5 stations.
Yes.
Yep.
So 25 shells, 25 birds or clays. And then we can move into another discipline of trap shooting, which is called doubles. And that's like where you live. I mean, you shoot it all, but that's where you live.
So, we have a saying like, singles are, I believe we say singles are for trophy. Handicap, so we'll get into that later, is for money, and then doubles are for fun. So I've always thought doubles are the most fun. Really enjoy shooting them. So doubles, you're still going to be on the 16-yard line of that semicircle that we talked about. So that's 16 yards from the house or bunker, whatever you want to call it. So instead of throwing one bird out at a time, it's going to throw 2. So as we talked about in singles, how the machine oscillates, the machine does not oscillate any longer. So basically you've got the targets that are set evenly to be distributed evenly. So they're going to throw, I don't know the exact angles, as I said, that we would like for them to throw, but the targets are going to throw the same way every time. So basically what the shooter would do is I call the first one a give me. So you're going to hold your gun really close to where that is. A lot of newer shooters, they want to put their gun down on the house and follow it up like they would a singles, but you know where that target's going to be.
Right. So
all you have to do is hold just below it as soon as you call pull. Now, some people call pull and pull the trigger, basically. That's not how I would recommend people doing it. So you're going to just watch the target come out. And I mean, I have very little gun movement to that first bird because you know where it is.
Right.
And then you're going and shooting the second target over there. So I call it a game of, we're going to shoot 100 targets, 50 pair of doubles. So I call it a game of 50 targets. You should always get that first bird. I could give a few tips on that. You want to be aggressive. So if you miss one every now and then, it's okay because you're being aggressive. But it's a game of 50 targets. Break that first bird and then go get the second one.
Yeah. I score a lot of trap. And so, everyone, it's really hard on themselves about doubles. I think that's why it's for fun, because people just think I can't be perfect at this, which I've seen it. but that's okay. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Shoot 50% of them. Like, then you did great, you know? So you're right. That first target, you should break it. And the second one is where you're like really trying to get it.
Yeah. So if you're missing first targets, it's, you know, I want to teach people to make sure they hit that first target because it's a give me, it's right there. And then the second target, then you learn how to go get that second target. So,
and then how much of that do you think is rhythm?
There's a lot of rhythm in it.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes rhythm can get people in trouble. So, you know, and I talk to rhythm to shooters. Before I walk up to the line, I have what we call tick, tock. So like a clock. So that's how I want to shoot them. Not always. So another thing that I preface on top of having that good rhythm is do not just shoot on rhythm.
Aim.
Wait, if you are not there, do not pull the trigger. And I as well as anyone, gets into the habit of doing that very same thing. You know, I shot, it was time, but I wasn't there. You know, so you've got to make sure that you're there. So I think it's important that shooters have a good rhythm. Internal clock. So as I said, before I get up to the line, you'll hear me at my Ranger or even at the camper going tick, tock. So I'm trying to get that in my head to make sure that I'm not going too fast. So a lot of shooters get into that bang, 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 bang. And then they start missing, you know, because they're trying to just shoot them way faster than what they can get there.
Yeah.
So.
That's really interesting. Do you visualize a lot, you know, before you walk out there to compete in your head?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, I think I've learned recently, like, I think I was on the Trap Talk podcast and, you know, before I went on, I kind of looked at some of my accolades and a lot of my 100 straights and doubles and like 200 straights and singles had came at the Grand. So that really prompted me to go, okay, why is that, Logan? Well, the day of the Grand Championships, I wake up that morning. I always get in the shower every morning and I start thinking about breaking clays right then or saying that tick, talk on the doubles morning or the singles. I tell myself, do not pull the trigger until you were there because on singles as well, I have the same problem. And a lot of people do. It's time to pull the trigger, bang.
Yeah.
Instead of going, am I there? If I'm not there, let's not pull the trigger.
Right. Yeah. That's super awesome. So outside of the fun discipline, which we call doubles, let's talk about the money-making discipline, which is handicap.
So handicap is, let's think of how to best describe it. So it's a system that I guess you would say offers rewards. So I think nowadays it's changed a little bit since I started. Used to, I believe you could start on the 20-yard line whenever you started. I think we're back to the 22-yard line.
Is that true? Yeah, I'm not sure. 21
or 22-yard line to start you off. So as I said, guys, you've got that semicircle. So in the semicircle, if you've seen a trap field, I guess I might.
Yeah, you can pull that up.
Yeah, I could pull our little Remington Gun Club deal here. So
I'll put it on the screen.
Yep, we're going to have to put that on the screen. So you've got your semicircle, and behind your initial 16-yard line front of your concrete, you've got lines that come back, and they're done in 1-yard blocks. And usually they're marked by numbers, so that's what yard line you're on. So based on you going to the amateur, so here we're talking about shooting amateur trap shooting association is where handicap is prevalent. Yeah. So based on what you shoot, you get moved back. So a 96, and this gets a little complicated. Okay. So a 96, so let's just say you're at a small shoot, and we'll start off there. So you're at a smaller local shoot, you shoot a 96, you're going to get a half a yard.
Okay, so it is called a punch.
Yes.
Okay.
Half a yard punch. So you get punches. So a lot of times now a lot of people use their on the phone card and then they don't have them. But used to, you physically went in when I started. So I guess I'm old enough now to see that gap a little bit. Yeah. Used to, we went in and got our cards punched. So you get a punch, so you get a half yard. That does not mean you scoot back a half yard. So until you hit that full yard, you don't actually scoot back to the next one. So then you shoot a 97, 98, or 99, and you get 1 yard. Okay. So you shoot any of those 3 scores, and you get moved back a full yard. So then 100 comes in, and it's a yard and a half. So you run 100 straight in your handicap, you get a yard and a half.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know the scores mattered. I knew it was over a certain thing you got a punch, but I didn't know that it mattered on the distance.
And then the other thing is if you're at very large shoots, like some of the larger state shoots, the Grand, some of the satellite Grand Americans from the ATA, you can, based on how many people are there, they bump your yardage up more. So if there's a certain amount of people, I used to know exactly how many people it took whenever I traveled all the time. But they'll give you a half yard, or at the Grand, a lot of times, I believe they'll even add like a yard. There's so many people in attendance. So instead of a yard, you'll get 2 yards in one lick. So that's a big difference. So as you scoot back, it gets tougher. So it goes from, I believe, 22-yard line all the way back to 27-yard line. So it gets tougher as you scoot back for sure. You know, you're starting to test the limit of your shells. You know, that's why a lot of times guys start out with 11.45s and continue there till like the 24-yard line, maybe 23 and 24. They might pick up that 1,200 foot per second. Yeah. As I said, most of it's in our minds.
Your head. Yeah.
And then once we hit like 25-yard line, we'll use like a nitro handicap that's a 1235 foot per second, ounce and an eighth. Or a 1 ounce 1290. Most people want more shot. As I said, as an engineer, I think that some of it can be in your head. Usually if you're there, you're there. If you're not, you're not. You usually miss by way more than a few inches or a pellet. So as you scoot back, you get rewarded in handicap. So eventually you get back to the 27. So a lot of guys who are real loyal ATA shooters, that's one of their really big goals, especially people starting out, is to get to the 27. And some people get back there very fast, and some people work their entire career in the ATA to get back to the 27-yard line.
And I mean, it's like kind of a badge of honor to shoot from the back fence.
Absolutely. That's what you'll see some of the older gentlemen that get back there that, you know, so we can get reductions. So if your average is below a certain threshold, you can get punched forward. So a lot of the older men don't want to give up that badge of honor, and they'll just stay on the 27 where, you know, I've always been like, man, if I can get a punch forward, all power to it. I mean, I've never gotten one yet, but I mean, why not get closer and try to, you know, kick somebody's butt to get back to the 27? Every yard forward's a little bit more your shell can handle, and, you know. Yeah,
and a lot of people don't know this, but Nitro 27s, that's why they're named that for the 27-yard line. Even though people use that shell to shoot a lot of things, including sporting clays. I mean, it's good for a lot of stuff, but that's why it's called that. You said that, like, once you hit the 24 line, you'll usually see people pick up faster shells.
Yes. So,
I
think I taught a kid the other day that he picked up a 1,200 foot per second. Yeah. Do
you think that's because you want to aim at the same spot? You shoot a clay and then supposedly the shot moves faster? So is that the whole point?
You should. If you really put the math to it, it probably doesn't make as much difference as you would think. So you're still going to have to aim a little differently.
Yeah.
But Ray Stafford, so Ray's a federal shooter, so in our company of brands, and he has shot 11.45 foot per second, so just light eights. Yeah. All of his career, and he has more 100 straights from the 27 than anyone. So
he shoots 11.45s from the 27?
He absolutely does, and has somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 40, I believe, 100 straights from the 27. So that's the goal, guys. Yeah. So I guess I could tell an achievement that, you know, if you've been in trap shooting a long time, people want to do what we call a grand slam. So it's a 200 straight from the 16-yard line, 100 straight from the 27-yard line in handicap, and then 100 in doubles. So I haven't achieved mine. I've still got to get my 100 from the 27.
Do you have to do that?
Got like 30 of them.
Do you have to do that at a grand, or like even satellite grands?
So
or just
any like registered shoot, which, you know, people really don't want to do it, where it's like, oh, we only had 5 shooters today, because then it's like, man, people didn't get to see me, and they might think that it's you know, taboo, and I didn't really get it or something like that. So there's a lot of that goes on. So you want to get it at a big shoot, but you don't have to, ideally.
Yeah, to get a grand slam.
Yes.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about ammo, but I want to dive in a little further to that. We offer a lot of trap loads, a lot of target loads. And so can you like just give us a brief overview of them?
Yeah. So I'll just start with kind of what I use, and then we'll branch off and say what product lines we've got from that.
Yeah.
So I use STS and Nitro 27. So for my singles and doubles. So I'll get a little bit into doubles when we get there. So singles, my preferred load is just an ounce and an eighth 11.45 STS. might use probably 8-shot most of the time. If it's really windy, I might try to pick up some 7.5, but I'm not picky. So I'll kind of just take whatever I can get around here for better prices, you know? So 8, 7.5, some guys really get into the weeds of that. I don't think that it matters that much personally. Like I said, usually if you're there, you're there. So that's what I typically use for singles. So STS, it's going to be 6% antimony shot. So as you go up in antimony, so there's usually your product lines of most companies are going to be like a 2 to a 6% shot. So what that does is that hardens up your shot a little bit, does make it slightly less dense, not anything noticeable, I would say, in patterns. But it usually gives you a little better pattern. So the harder shot, your pellets are going to deform a little less. So when pellets deform, obviously they want to throw outside of your pattern. So that harder amount of shot gives us a little better patterns. As I said, you know, that could get into, you know, you go on, there's a website called Trapshooters Forum, and there's these guys who are always on here. I mean, if you want to post a comment and get brutally, you know, commented on, that is your place to go. So they could even comment on stuff like this. You know, that's a big debate of 2%, 6%. Does it really make the difference? So that's what's in our STS line. I use that for singles. Doubles, I personally still use that 1 1/8 ounce 1145 STS. I use it for both shots.
I was going to say you don't stack. You don't.
Well,
stack
there was a time where I experimented with, you know, using light 8s, so or L8s. That's 1100 feet per second for the first shot. I personally probably like a little movement of my gun so that it kind of starts prompting me to that second target. So I pulled off of those. There was a time where I shot 1200s at the second shot. You know, I ideally am going to shoot them close enough that they're where a lot of people would shoot their singles.
They're normal targets.
Yeah. So I don't see any need for it. Another thing was I brought my camper to shoots, and it would seem like I would have a whole bay of like 30 cases of shells, and I'd be, oh my goodness, I ran out of this. You know, so I'd rather just keep 2 shells. So that's just me personally. A lot of people are going to shoot different shells. You know, me personally, I've said it a lot of times during this podcast, guys. If you're there, you're there.
Yep.
You usually don't miss by a pellet or an inch. Moving on to handicap. So I'm going to use Nitro 27s. So our gold, gorgeous shells, you know.
Yeah.
I've used them since I was a kid. So guys, it's not just since I have become a product engineer here, which I also lived in Arkansas, like to shoot at the gun club here. So it held a special place in my heart. For those of you dads out there, I would say my dad always used to say, I'm going to put whatever in your pocket, Logan, is going to make you feel like you're going to walk out and shoot 100 straight. And for me, that was always STS and Nitros.
Yep.
So moving on to handicap. So yeah, I said I'm going to use those Nitro 27s. For me, a lot of people, this is where they're going to get finicky between those 8s and 7.5s. I don't find that I probably just do a whole lot better with 8s or 7.5s. I probably like 7.5s just to be a little bit heavier shot, you know.
Sure.
But I shoot a lot of 8s as well. So just that 1235 foot per second, ounce and an eighth.
That's what's important for you.
I will say my superstition probably kicks in at the 27 that I would like to have that ounce and an eighth a shot. So just to give me every single pellet out there I can get. Because if I barely chip one at the 27, my goodness, it's good enough.
Because if you are off on the 27, you're not hitting it. Like there's no,
absolutely.
Oh, thank gosh, I got that. Like, no, there's no.
You know, I always talk to people about how at the 27, you know, the 16, I see a lot of people start off and they'll move their gun to the left because they called pull and move their gun, and then they come over and shoot the target. And I tell them, guys, you get back to the 27, we don't have any of that. You move your gun too early, you missed because you're only moving your gun a tiny amount.
This much,
So that's kind of my shell selection. I'm getting a little more into our product family. So we also have our gun club load. So what we're going to do there, that's going to have a 2% antimony. As I said, some guys actually prefer to have that 2% antimony. It's probably going to give you a slightly wider pattern. Depends on your gun, guys. So don't say that the product engineer said par for par that this is what it's going to get you.
Yeah.
So 2% antimony, it's going to be a little cheaper. So nowadays, as we all know, shells are going up in price. So a lot of people are using these. I know lots of, I believe, world champions, All-Americans use Gun Club.
I use Gun Clubs.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I've shot a lot of it. I think I just still always go back to my younger days when Dad was like, whatever you want in your pocket that's going to make you run them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always shot STS and nitro. So Gun Club is going to give you basically the same product family line as STS. I believe we may even have some of the same overlap with the nitro. So it's going to be that 2% shot, and it's going to be just a little bit cheaper for you guys. So it's still our unibody shell. It's got
Reloadable,
a Nizen cap
beautiful.
instead of brass cap, so that's a little different. So that's why most people might lean a little bit to reloading the nitro and the STS, but it's still very reloadable. You know, we do our reload test, and you can get a lot of iterations out of it. So.
Yeah, and we have
now
Gun Club Cure.
Absolutely. So those are our pretty, what would you call that? Like a teal blue shell. And man, I've heard a ton of people, especially the ladies, are, oh my goodness, I love that. And I'll admit myself, you know, I think it's a good looking shell. It really catches your eye. Yeah. I mean, it really does. So
I mean, if it makes
you
feel
see
good,
any, I would say pick up some and see how they shoot. They're our Gun Club, same thing, except part of the profits go to
Arkansas
Children's Hospital. So support a good cause there.
Yeah, and like Logan was saying, if it makes you feel good to put the teal blue shells in your gun, that's gonna get that consistency, get that pre-shot routine to help you break those clays. Do it.
Yeah, as we said earlier, you know, you've got you as a shooter. You know, maybe you started out new, you've got your form. Well, guys, it comes into your eyes and in between your ears, so your brain. So if that gives you that little boost of confidence, you know, buy whatever gives you confidence or whatever your budget can fit. All of our shells, I guarantee you, I've shot lots of 100 straights with Gun Clubs as well as I have STS and nitros. So they will all get the job done.
Yeah. If you're there, you're there.
Yeah. So I guess we do have one more product line. So most of our trap shooters aren't going to use it as much. So it's our game loads.
Oh, yeah.
So our game loads are going to be 1 ounce and under. So you've got your 1 ounce 1290. You know, a lot of guys go to Walmart and you pick up a lot of shells that are 1 ounce 1290s, and there's nothing wrong with that. Give you a little extra velocity. Once again, I think the 1 ounce versus 1 1/8. If I'm in competition, I'm probably going to grab that 1 1/8. But at the end of the day, if you're there, you're probably there. So game loads, that offers you a 1 ounce lineup. Most of those are geared for a little more velocity, but it's very similar to a Gun Club load. So if you don't have Gun Clubs, STS, or nitros at your local store, maybe pick up some game loads and try those out.
Yep. And of course, like you said, it all depends on your gun. Different guns like different ammo. That's just how it goes.
Absolutely. So that gets into your choke, how your forcing cones are done in your gun, stuff like that. So a lot of people say, you know, my gun likes this, and that's fine. You know, I will say from my gun, I sent mine off to a guy, and I specifically sent him boxes of shells. And I said, you know, and mine's done to STS and nitro. So I said, this is what I'm going to shoot. Here's how I want you to get it to pattern the best. So based on the load, I would say, you know, go out to that pattern board and try it out. You know, maybe you have some gaps in your pattern with a certain shell, or a lot of times I see chokes. You know, people will say, you know, if they don't send them, I sent mine off to Tommy Wilkinson, and you know, he does the work to make sure no matter what choke you send, it's gonna shoot beautifully at the end. So a lot of people play with buy 5 different chokes. You know, some chokes are just, I believe, cut better, and they're going to pattern a little better. Of course, you can buy more high quality chokes that are going to have better quality control and be more dependable from choke to choke, where you don't have to go buy 5 or 10 of them before you say, man, that's the shell and that's the choke that I like. That pattern's good every time.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say, guys, is, you know, number one thing is go to the pattern board. You get started. That's what I like to do with a lot of my new shooters. Is you don't realize whenever you pick up a gun from the store, you know, mine's got a custom fit stock. When you aim at a pattern board, you want that pattern to be pointed exactly where you are. So, you know,
you got to see where you're shooting.
I won't name names,
seeing.
but you know, in the past few years, I've bought a few hunting, you know, upland guns, duck hunting guns, that I wanted to go out. And I mean, some of them pattern very high. You know, my dad shot one of the new ones we got, and it patterned like 100% high. So what that means is so let's say we've got a dot here and we shoot, no pellets are going to hit that dot. So you had to aim under what you were shooting. I think it was 100% high and almost a pattern to the left. So to you new shooters out there, you think, man, I'm right where I need to be. You may be right where you need to be, but you need to go to the pattern board. You need to shoot your gun and see if it's aiming where you are looking or pointing.
Right.
So that's a very important factor that I would say for new shooters. Maybe you go out and try it a little bit, but if you're going to shoot several times, I would recommend going to the pattern board and making sure your gun is shooting where you're looking or aiming.
What is your gun set to 70-30?
Mine's an 80-20.
Oh, wow,
so
okay.
Typically trap shooters. So I'm a sporting clay shooter too. So sporting, we're going to get a little flatter, 60-40, 50-50. So more like your typical field gun. Some of these new ones are getting a little higher these days. But trap shooting people tend to definitely want higher patterns. So the reason for that is we're always underneath a bird coming up. So our gun movement's always up. So we want to ideally always see that target above our barrel. So at 80-20, I can cover it up, but I don't have a lot of room for error there.
Yeah.
But I'm always going to aim underneath the target. So that's why my gun's 80-20. A lot of trap shooters even want 100% high. So they're always quite a bit underneath that bird to really hit it. So, I would say, guys, that totally depends. My father's kind of started trap shooting. He's legacy bird hunter, stuff like that. He tends to like that 60-40 and he likes to cover stuff up, but that's from years of bird hunting. Your new shooters, you can really adapt them a lot faster. A hunting gun, I like it to shoot a little higher, but that's because I've shot my trap gun for 13 or 14 years now that shoots 80-20, 90-10. So that's where I would recommend, maybe I wouldn't recommend, guys. Maybe it's really all try it out, see what you like, see what works best for you.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's all personal preference. You can change and modify a lot of stuff to fit what you like as a shooter.
Absolutely. So that's where like an adjustable comb on your gun is very, very important. Also,
and, the comb is
you can
the
add
cheek
pads
rest.
to it instead. So yes, where you rest your cheek.
Yeah.
So what we call adjustable, we can move it up, down, a lot of them side to side. So as I said, the side to side will help that pattern being side to side, up and down. We can move your pattern up and down based on, what you try out and what you like.
Yeah. And then the rib of your gun goes along the top of your barrel, correct?
Yes.
And then do you shoot a high rib?
So mine is a higher ribbed gun. So the theory behind the high ribbed gun is that you can ideally keep your face. So see me, guys, my head's very straight whenever and you'll see, if you see me shoot, my head's pretty straight whenever I put it on a gun versus some of the other guns you've really got to hunker down. So the goal with that is to keep your heads up so it gives you more peripheral vision to be able to see the birds around the gun. So two-eyed shooters here, guys. So if you're one-eyed, you're not going to have that peripheral below the gun. So that you can see the bird below the gun, your head's up. To me, maybe the biggest benefit, that's a big benefit, being able to see birds well, because as I said, that's a lot of the game. But as well as when your head's up, to me, I can do this gun mount. As I said, guys, I don't do it as much as I always used to, but used to almost every night. I did 100 gun mounts a night. That's very easy to replicate.
Yep.
If your head's up, I just put my gun up like this every time. And that's very similar to how I'm going to mount my gun right there that I just showed you guys.
Yeah. If you have to hunker down into your gun, you have to put your
harder
cheek
to replicate
on the
that.
same place on the
That's
gun
what I
every
tell
time.
my new shooters. You'll see them. I'll do it on my right cheek. I'm left-handed, guys, but you see them where it's just barely pooched, and then the next shot they're down like this. And the important thing for those guys to remember is that's changing your point of impact height.
Yep.
So you've got to do it the exact same way every time, because if I'm here, my gun is shooting very high compared to where if I'm really hunkered down on my gun, it just lowered a bunch. So that's the potential difference in just completely missing birds right there. New shooters, a lot of times I see they even don't want to put their head on the gun, and I'm like, brother, you probably got to aim 2 foot underneath that bird to hit it.
Yeah. I mean, the recoil, you can feel it on the face sometimes, but you got to do it if you want to break clays. You got to put your face on the gun.
Well, and if you're just barely into the gun, you're really giving the gun a little more opportunity to come and rock into you,
Yeah.
So,
and that's where gun fit really matters.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Absolutely. So gun fit, if your gun really fits you, it's going to kick you as hard, but it's going to feel better. It's not going to beat you up in what we call hot points. So you don't want hot points. That's where your shoulder just gets really bruised, or your face. I had a stock at one time that I started bleeding. I was shooting really, really well at a shoot, started bleeding. And of course, naturally, it just went downhill from there.
Yeah.
So your fit of your gun is very important, especially if you're really going to be serious about it.
Yeah, because at a normal trap shoot, you shoot 300 birds?
300 birds most days, like the Grand American. There's so many people, a lot of days. Once the Grand starts, we shoot 200 a day. Or championship days, a lot of times we won't shoot as many. But yeah, your preliminary days, you're going to shoot 300 a day. That's a lot of shells, guys. Even when I haven't been shooting lately and I get back into it, at the end of the day, I'm wore out, know. So
it's mentally fatiguing, but also physically. You do have to mount a gun.
Absolutely.
Every time
and
you
that's
shoot.
Muscles that you don't typically use doing this. So that's why I recommend those gun mounts. I've said it a bunch of times, and I say it a bunch of times to the guys I teach.
So what's coming up for you this season? What's next? What's the goal?
So probably first shoot of the year, we're looking at either like the Missouri State shoot possibly, but for sure on the calendar as of right now. So we'll go to the Kansas State shoot. Made lots of friends over there throughout the years. They're like family to me. So that's in Wichita, Kansas, Sedgwick, actually. But, if you know geographically, it's basically Wichita.
And that's where people know Wichita. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So next after that, we'll go to the Arkansas State shoot, which it's just a few weeks after. We have what we call the zone shoot. So I believe I'm the Southwestern zone. So that's where we combine like 6 or 7 states. And we have different locations that everybody can shoot at. And we all put our scores in. So that we're actually considered a larger shoot. Potentially, been talking to a few friends about the Iowa State shoot this year. So I've been there many years. They throw a very good shoot. And then, of course, as usual, the Grand American.
Yep.
So
up in Sparta.
Trying to do a little more shooting this year. The past few years, work's been very busy, and I'm lucky to get 2 or 3 shoots in a year. So I'm just trying to do some more, maybe after last year's win, show my face a little more and see if I can compete.
Yeah. Is the Grand Slam in your future?
I got to get started on that handicap practice, I would say. So you never know about me, guys. You may see me at a shooting low 90s in handicap, or there's, the Grand last year I had several 97, 98s. So got to figure out how to get my mental game on, guys. So, really, I would say that's what I'm lacking in handicap. Used to, I had a great mental game for it, and I was a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere along the lines, I lost it, and I've got to find it. So it doesn't matter who you are. You still, I've got tons to learn. I absolutely can still tell you that I learn something every day. A motto I have for my guys, especially practice guys, is don't go to practice and be counting exactly how many targets you shoot. Something my dad always told me that I thought was so important was, Logan, we're not keeping any of our score whenever we come in here. If we learn one thing today at practice, we had a good day.
That's a win.
So learn one thing and really try to learn it. So another thing is when these teachers teach you things, your coaches, just random people at the gun club. So one thing I'll say, trap shooting, guys, we call it ourselves family. All of us are family. Audrey, you've been to our shoots.
Yeah, the culture is awesome.
The culture is amazing. The people just couldn't be any better. So, you go to your random gun club, and odds are somebody like me who's been doing it for years is going to reach out if they see that you need help, and they're going to try to help you. So listen to what those guys say. I would say my approach, I've collected a lot of things from all the professionals. I've got to be pretty good friends with several of the professionals in the game. And I never took lessons from any of them. I still think that that's a good way to go. If you want to get ahead quick, guys, is to take lessons from some of the guys who really know what they're doing. But mine was an eclectic approach.
Yeah.
You're never going to resemble one of these guys and completely copy everything they do and 100%. Be 100% successful. I took little things from each of their videos, their books, and just talking to them in person and said, I like that. I'll try it. But what I was getting at there earlier, guys, when they tell you to try something, do not shoot 5 shells. Don't shoot 1 box. Shoot 100 or a whole day of shooting or a couple days of shooting, trying what they're telling you. I was a one-eyed shooter for 7 years, and I didn't want to change. But my dad convinced me. We read a book that we talked about it, and we went with it. And we said for this entire year, I at that point had been an All-American 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And we said, for this entire year, you will shoot 2-eyed. I don't care how bad the struggle is, but you're going to try it. And I think I came out a better shooter for it. So
now you got the whole scope of vision.
Yeah.
2 eyes open.
Guys, be willing to make changes. You know,
Be
I'm
flexible.
still very willing to make changes. And, I've been very successful throughout the years.
Yep. Be coachable. And, discipline, focus, short-term memory.
Yep.
I would say
short term. That's what I tell guys. You
Yeah.
miss one, you got 3 seconds. You can give yourself 3 seconds to say why and how am I going to change it.
Yep.
After that, it's gone.
And let's take a deep breath and not throw our shells.
I could always talk about trap shooting forever, but I had one time where I threw one shell and my dad was behind me.
Logan.
I came off the line and he said, if you ever do that again, I will come out there in the middle of your round and we will be going home.
Yeah.
I don't care if we're across the country. We'll be flying home.
Yep. He says, we're
and
done.
it was a great lesson.
Yeah.
It really was. So don't get mad at yourself. Just, you got to focus on what can I do next? Why did I miss it? And how am I going to fix it?
Yeah. Trap shooters with a great mental game. You can always tell when they're on the line because whether they hit a bird or miss a bird, it's
You don't
the
know.
same thing.
Yep.
You're like, did he just miss? I have no idea.
Yep.
So that's something you taught me, actually.
Yep.
So learning something every day, guys. There you have it, guys. Remington is on the rise. Like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to share this podcast with your hunting or shooting buddies. If you have any questions for me or Logan here, you can email us at podcast@remington.com. Thanks for listening.